I don't think water should be CSR. And for the last 2 decades, I've been saying this to companies. Don't call it CSR. Call it something that you have to do something about, because otherwise you won't have it. It's as simple as that. You agree?
Bravo.
If you look at investment flows into water, total, public plus private, they are never more than 10 to 15% into water out of the whole infrastructure funding flow year on year. Of that, private money is about half or less than half of that. So you've got to wonder why it's not being invested in.
Usha, tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm not sure that people care what the water footprint is of a food and beverage company. I mean, who cares?
They don't care. Even the companies don't believe in it. Well, I'll be really honest with you. Companies are beginning to realize that water solutions for their operations are just as important as energy solutions or transport solutions or telecom solutions. Just as important, because they are coming up against walls of one sort or another where they are not getting the water they need.
Welcome to Distilled, brought to you by KTM. I'm your host, Will Sarni, CEO of Water Foundry and founder and general partner of Water Foundry Ventures. During each episode, we'll be speaking to global water leaders solving wicked water problems. We'll discuss their career, the challenges facing the water sector, and what comes next. In today's episode, we'll be speaking to my friend, Usha Rao-Monari, senior partner at Weller's Impact. Usha, thank you for being on Distilled. Sincerely, very excited to have a conversation with you. I don't want to make you blush, but a big fan of what you've done and what you've contributed to in the world of water. It's admirable beyond words. So having a conversation with you is terrific. I look forward to it. And so, as you know, I want to talk about your origin story, your career, observations on, all the moving parts in the world of water right now and some of the challenges. And where do you think this is all headed in the scheme of things? And you've got such a very, very unique perspective and grounded in the world of finance and funding and impact. So I'm really anxious to talk to you about, at a very granular level, what's going on.
Thank you, Will. And before I talk about myself, which I don't like very much, but I will because you asked the question, I am a great admirer of yours. I think nobody has contributed more than you to innovative thinking in this space, as you very well know, needs innovative thinkers. So thank you for inviting me. It's my honor and my pleasure to be here in this conversation. So to your question, it's not that I chose this space, water, to work in. I started in infrastructure, general infrastructure in the 90s when it was just privatizing. I started in energy like everybody because that was the first area that started privatizing. I did the fossil sort of energy. I moved then to renewable energy when that started opening up. And from there, I moved to cleaner areas such as gas, let's say, and I looked at water. And when I started doing projects in water, this was with the IFC when I was there, I was hooked. It is a fascinating sector. It's a fascinating funding space. It is not yet, unfortunately, an investable asset class. And maybe you want to talk about that later. But it is a fascinating mix of contrasts, meaning it is emotional, the whole fundamental human right to water. It is behavioral. How do we use water and why do we use water? It is economic for all the reasons we know it is economic, even though it's not properly priced. It is technological, although there's not enough technology in the space. So it's got so many drivers within one space. So I was hooked. And so I decided that this was going to be the area that I would work in. I didn't give up on energy. I continued working on renewable energy and, gas and LNG and that kind of stuff. But water was where I thought I would find the most interesting type of deals and the most long-standing and long-term type of deals, which is the other thing I was looking for.
That's really interesting. I love that. Well, I agree with your characterization of the water sector and I don't like using the word sector, but water is something that is so connected to humanity. It's such a visceral connection to it, and getting hooked. I mean, most of the people I talk to that are water practitioners and have dedicated their lives to it really use the word hooked. And it says a lot about what water is all about and people that gravitate towards it and decide that this is going to be their thing. I think we should run with one of your comments about not investable or challengingly investable. So let's talk about that a little bit more. I mean, you've been on the journey from, big infrastructure, big water infrastructure projects, globally, and now what you're doing with Wellers, really interesting. So could you talk a little bit more about the investability of water?
So this as much as I do, but for the sake of the conversation, if you look at infrastructure as a set of asset classes, energy is the most invested in. It always has been for one reason. Actually, it's not for one reason or another, for good reason. And we should probably come back to that. Transportation, I would say, telecom, the usual sort of areas that people wanted to put money into. If you look at investment flows into water, total, public plus private, they are never more than 10 to 15% into water out of the whole infrastructure funding flow year on year. Of that, private money is about half or less than half of that. So you've got to wonder why it's not being invested in. Even countries, multilateral development banks, you name them, are not putting as much money into water, which is very needed, as they do into energy, as they do into roads and bridges and whatnot, as even they do into telecom. So that's why I say it is not yet an investable asset class. We can go into the reasons why, but everybody knows the reasons why. And I think that rather than, going over the reasons, we should talk about how can we fix that,
right? If
we can fix that. And some of the things I'm doing today have to do with that.
Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, and I love how you think. I really believe that we can get mired in what's broken, what doesn't work, but we really need to be having the conversation, and more than the conversation, developing innovative partnerships to get us unstuck and take the friction out of all of this. So, what's your take on how do we take the friction out and unclog it?
Well, I mean, honestly, that could be a very long conversation, but let's just take a few pieces of it. So if I look at water today, just as a flow of water itself, but a flow of revenues, given that water is needed for life, okay, let's take that as a fundamental principle, water cash flows should be AAA rated. And if they are AAA rated, they should get all the funding they want, but they get no funding. And so it's really a conundrum, actually, when you think about it. And so I've thought about it a little bit over the years, as you have and as others have. And I think there are a few elements that water does not have that perhaps other infrastructures have. So take energy as a good example. Remember when renewable energy came up? It was as scary as water, right, to almost everybody. Nobody wanted to put money into it, really, But what happened in renewable energy? They had very cleverly they brought in a combination of a policy instrument combined with then financial instruments. That policy instrument was the feed-in tariff. The feed-in tariff, what it did was it assured investors of a certain return, but more importantly, it assured investors of a stable financial horizon. As a finance person myself, people always ask me, you're just interested in returns, right? And I say, yes, of course, I'm interested in returns. I'm more interested in financial stability, predictability. That investment horizon has to be reasonably stable and predictable for me to put money. Anyway, so in energy, they brought in the feed-in tariff, and that helped assuage a lot of investor concerns. Another example in another sector, which is infrastructure, is roads. Roads in India at the time. This was way back, I want to say the 90s. The then roads minister decided that he didn't have, as the government, enough money to build out the Indian highway network. And he had all sorts of very, very ambitious plans for it. So what he did was he put a 1 cent equivalent cess on petroleum sales, created a pool of money that he then ring-fenced really well, so that other ministries couldn't get it and so on and so forth. And he used that money to offer the first wave of private investors into the Indian highway network an 18% guaranteed annuity return. Who wouldn't put money into that? Tell me. Anybody. And so investors came in, private investors, with public money, but private investors came in. That was phase one. They got used to the risks and etc. of investing in that space. So phase two, he took that away. So what I'm trying to say is, again, it was, if you will, a policy instrument combined with financial instruments. Why have we not been able to do that in water? I go around the world talking about this, but somehow so far, but now it's changing, it hasn't moved in water.
I completely agree with you on all of your points. You bring up something that I think everyone sort of kind of knows, but we don't focus on it enough, which is public policy change and innovation in public policy as a driver to attract investments, attract entrepreneurs, get the private sector more engaged. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to add one thing. I'm seeing more and more corporations, as part of their water stewardship strategy, start to think about their role in policy innovation in a very positive way. So can they promote aquifer recharge in the American West? Can they promote gray water recycling in the built environment, in homes and commercial properties, and get away from exclusively centralized infrastructure? So there's just so much to be done there, yet we're sort of still stuck on that in terms of how do we really change water public policy to deliver the benefits that we saw with energy? And I'm not sure I have an answer on that one.
Sorry, I think it's a great question, and I'm not sure I have an answer, but I think we should try to see what could be done. So just breaking up your question into some parts. One, can companies, under their stewardship umbrellas, participate more fully in the water space, including in changing public policy to help them put more money in, for example, or to put more efforts and technology in? The answer is a resounding yes. Are they doing it though? Well, not enough.
Not enough.
And I think, unfortunately, it's because this notion of stewardship, of worrying about water, of the water footprint, all these things that we have seen, all come under this banner called CSR. I don't think water should be CSR. And for the last 2 decades, I've been saying this to companies. Don't call it CSR. Call it something that you have to do something about, because otherwise you won't have it. It's as simple as that. You agree?
Bravo. Bravo. I agree with you enthusiastically. We bundle, we bundle water under CSR and ESG reporting, and we ignore the fact that it's fundamental to business growth, economic development. It's so core to that. It's not a check the box reporting exercise. And and you're right. I can't stand footprinting. I think it dumbs down everything the corporate sector does, and I would argue even the public sector. It's so limiting. We have no imagination. And I'm going to go on a rant just for a couple of seconds, but it really distracts from, the art of the possible. What could the private sector do? And I push this notion of handprint, that corporations have a lot to offer, but they are dumbed down into just focusing on their footprint. And Usha, tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm not sure that people care what the water footprint is of a food and beverage company. I mean, who cares? I don't know. I could be wrong.
They don't care. I mean, it's become, as you said, a box-ticking exercise. The water footprint effort has been a box-ticking exercise. Even the companies don't believe in it. Well, I'll be really honest with you. So how do we? So that's the problem. How do we change it? And I think the way to change it, and I'm saying this because it's so unfortunate. Companies are big, and I sit on the board of one, so that's why I'm saying this. Companies are beginning to realize that water solutions for their operations are just as important as energy solutions or transport solutions or telecom solutions, just as important, because they are coming up against walls of one sort or another where they are not getting the water they need, for example. So I sit on the board of a wonderful extractives company. They are now in the process, which I'm obviously, helping with, thinking about what their water plan is going to be over the next 3 decades. And more company, it's an overall water, and the water plan is not just how do I get more water. It's about how do I work in the areas where I operate with other users at that, let's say, watershed or water basin, whatever, at that level. How do I work with others who are using the same source to make sure that it's win-win for everyone? My contribution is going to be, as you correctly said, resources, financial resources, but also technologies. That's where I can contribute to this problem. So can we come up with solutions? So I think slowly there's another company in the agri space that's also thinking about this. How do I worry? I need to worry about water. How do I worry about it? So I think it's changing, Will, but it's not changed enough.
I agree with you. As we're talking, I'm just thinking that, or we're tagging that, we sound like evangelists in a way, in a positive way, which is we need to change. And how do we get unstuck from, a theme, a notion that people have bought into that is really just not that creative and not that impactful at speed.
I don't know. Look, you've heard me say this before, I think. Every infrastructure-related problem or natural resource-related problem, in my humble opinion, requires a set of things, okay? One, of course, it requires finance, some type of finance, long, short, patient. People have all these wonderful labels, right? Whatever, but it needs finance. It needs innovation, okay? Both technological, but also business model. It needs infrastructure models. We can talk about what's happening in water with that. It needs some sort of infrastructure model. Very importantly, to our earlier discussion, it needs proper governance. By governance, I mean not just the policies, not just the regulations, etc., but the institutions that support them, okay, at the level where country or whatever level. And finally, and most importantly, if you will, for water, it needs some sort of social inclusion component. Because otherwise, Will, you know it better than me, we're going to run into sustainability of projects, sustainability of contracts, sustainability of financing if we don't worry about that last S, the social. So
Yes.
by way of solutions rather than what the problems are, of the mind. But I need more intelligent people to work with me on this. Of bringing together three instruments to fund water: the policy instrument, as we talked about it; the financial instrument, of course. You don't have to develop like cool new things. I think we got plenty that we can use, even for water. And finally, a social instrument. And by that I mean, how do you ex ante structure in social equity or social inclusion or justice, as it's popularly being called, water justice, as it's popularly being called today, into a deal structure or a project structure or even a country's water plan? How do you do once we start looking at it like that, I honestly believe things will start changing in the water space. And I don't call it a sector either.
That's great. I think we need to blow that up. Water industry, water sector, it doesn't do honor to the complexity of water, the attributes, if you will, and the unique quality of it. I always think about how we need to get out and talk differently to civil society about the issues, the challenges, but the opportunities around water that make sense to the layperson. A couple weeks ago, I spoke to two fourth grade classes in New York. My sister's a teacher there. And it was great speaking to these fourth graders because it really made me think about how do I take the jargon that I use and translate that into something that's very understandable, and how do I respond thoughtfully to their questions? And I just see that as a huge opportunity to break the logjam a bit. And I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, so we have to do that. Somebody said to me, and I think it's just still true, water people talk to water people. And we go to all of these conferences and we just talk to each other. We don't talk to anyone else, and I think it is in many, many ways very, very true. So we have to do that. We have to learn to reach across borders or reach across lines that somehow have been drawn. But we need to do more than that, Will. My push on the social instrument, it goes way beyond that, which is that when I'm structuring a large water infrastructure investment, let's just say, and I've got the government on side with their policy instrument, I've got myself with the financial instrument, I want to include what you label civil society in the thinking around this project. Ex ante, not as I will do a hospital. No, that's not water justice. Water justice is exactly that. It is that everybody who needs water gets water. And most of all, human beings. So, it's that kind of thinking. So I think civil society, and I was talking to some representatives of indigenous communities not so long ago. And they said, we've been the stewards of water forever. How can you come and tell us Company X is now has a water stewardship program in this water basin or in this place where we've been living for hundreds and hundreds of years, which is true. I mean, we just don't think about these things. I'm not trying to be an evangelist here. I'm just saying, in order for me to have a safe and return-oriented investment, I need to make sure that I cover all my bases. That's all I'm saying. And one base is civil society.
That's been ignored historically. Yes.
That's been ignored. So that's kind of what I mean by the social instrument. You need to bring them in right at the beginning.
I like how you framed it. So I think I'll see you next week in London. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Why
don't we chat a bit more? Because Yeah, we touched on a few things that I absolutely believe need to be advanced, if you will, with our colleagues, communities, and unusual suspects, if you will, people that we typically don't talk to. I know personally I don't talk to whole groups of stakeholders because I go to water conferences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But
I can. But I will be there.
Awesome. So Usha, there's much to do. And thank you so much for your thoughts. And, your origin story is really interesting in that it provides insights into what works and what needs to work and what can be transferred into the water sector. So thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. All right, you take care.